Today's lesson is about writing the equation of a line. In other words, if given different types of data, are you able to write an equation that looks like y equals mx plus b? Your answers today will be things like y equals 2x plus 4, y equals negative 1/2 plus 3. So before we get into the examples, let's take a look at our vocab. There are two different options for equations that you guys are allowed to use. The first option that we are using today is the slope-intercept form of a line. This we are familiar with. This is an equation of the form y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope and b is the y-intercept. This is the equation we used in the last unit when we were graphing lines. Okay, this is what all of your answers will end up being like. Another formula that you have the option of using is what's called point-slope form of a line. That is an equation of the form y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And it says m is the slope and x1, y1 is simply a point on the line. Now when we get into the examples, we will be sure that we practice one of the first type and one of the second type every time. That way you can get familiar with using both, and then you can choose which method you like more. And then this is just a little bit of review because you will hear these words again. Horizontal line is an equation of the form y equals a number. Remember, in these equations, there's absolutely no x value. And a vertical line is just the opposite. An equation of the form x equals a number. In other words, there's no y anywhere in your equation. So let's go ahead and jump right into the examples. As I said, we'll be working through one way and the other way. This is your first type of equation, or this is your first type of example. On these examples, you'll be given the same two pieces of information. You'll be given a point and a slope. Same thing over here, you're given a point and a slope. But we're going to be using both equations so you can see the difference between the two. So if you look at A and B here, we already have the slope. We already know the value of m. The main thing we are missing is the y-intercept. So in example A, we're going to use y equals mx plus b to help us. What we are going to do is we have three numbers that were given to us. We are going to plug those three numbers in the equation where they belong. Well, we already know the slope is going to be your m, so I'm going to label that m. When I give you a pair, like 4, -7, hopefully we always know that whenever I give you a pair, I'm always giving you an x value and a y value. So as you can see, those are the three places we're going to put the numbers. So in place of y, as you can see, I have a -7. In place of m, as you can see, I have a -3. We have multiplication here. In place of x, I have a +4. Now, our only goal is to figure out what b is. Well, in algebra land, the first thing we always do is multiplication. So I'm going to keep the -7. A -3 times 4 is a -12. Bring down the b. If I want b by itself, I need to move that -12 to the other side. The opposite of a -12 is a +12. Those cancel. -7 plus 12 is a +5. And that's your answer for b. Now that's not what I asked you to find. I didn't ask you to find b, I asked you to find an equation. But now we have both pieces of information to plug into our equation. Now the two pieces that we need to replace are the m and the b. So our equation is going to stay y equals. We know m already previously was -3. Now the x stays in the equation. And in place of b, we just found that the answer for b was a +5. And that is your answer. Hopefully that didn't seem too bad. we are now going to do example B using the other formula. That formula was y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And this equation, the three items that we are replacing are y1, m, and x1. So, as we already know, slope is always m. And again, when I give you a point, I give you an x and a y. In this case, we're going to label them x1 and y1. So we're going to plug those three things in the equation where they go. Y minus, well, y1 over here is 2 equals m over here is 3/5. X stays x minus x1 is -5. Notice, don't lose one of those negatives. That is meant to be a double negative. So, let's talk about some things that we need to do here. This one's a little different. First of all, anytime you see two negatives, go ahead and do the double positive. Plus, plus. Now we got all positives. Our goal is still to get y by itself. So, whenever we see parentheses, we think of distributing. 3/5 times x is simply 3/5 x. And if you need a calculator for this part, by all means, 3 divided by 5 times positive 5. So in your calculator, you're typing in 3 divided by 5 times 5. And your calculator should tell you positive 3. Now on the other side, I still have y minus 2. Now, we need to finish getting y by itself. That means that this minus 2 needs to go over to the other side. So the opposite of subtraction is addition. I'm going to add 2 to both sides. Notice I put it under the 3. I put it under the other whole number. That leaves us with y equals 3 over 5x, and 3 plus 2 is 5. So these are both options that you have today to help you solve. You are not required to use both. You can use the first method or the second method, whichever you feel more comfortable with. So now we're going to step it up and look at a slightly different problem. Example 2, I'm changing up what I give you. Now I am giving you 2 points. Notice the change from the last problem. The last problem I gave you the slope. This time I am not. However, you can find the slope, and that is our first step. We need to use the formula from the last lesson. I'll write it down again. M equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We're using that formula again to help us find slope. So I'm going to label my points. x1, y1, x2, y2. This is all stuff from the previous lesson. Let's fill in what we know. y2 is 2 minus y1 is 8. On the denominator, x2 is 3 minus x1 is 5. Okay? So now we're ready to do some basic math. 2 minus 8 is -6. 3 minus 5 is -2. If we divide -6 by -2, we end up with a positive 3. So this is your m. So now that we have m, it's exactly like the first example. We have m, and we have a point. So we're going back on this example to y equals mx plus b. Now, several people usually ask, how do I know which x and which y point to use from the very beginning? It doesn't matter. I have people who like to pick the smaller numbers. I have people who like to pick the positive numbers, as long as you pick the same pair. So I am going to use this first pair with my m. So let's plug in what we know. Y is over here. It is 2. M is over here. It is 3. That is multiplication. X is right here. It is also 3 plus B. Put up my line. First thing we did on example 1 was multiplication. 3 times 3 is 9. The next thing we did on example 1 was move the 9 to the other side. The opposite of a positive 9 is a negative 9. That means 2 minus 9 is negative 7, and that's our B value. So now we can go up and make our final answer. We are plugging M and B into the equation. So our final answer is Y equals M is 3, X, because B is a negative 7, we just put minus 7. So all we did on this example was we added the first step of finding M. So we're going to do the exact same thing on example 2, only we're going to use the other equation. Let's start with the slope. We have x1 and y1, x2 and y2. In our formula, y2 is 0 minus y1 is 1. On the bottom, x2 is 3 minus x1 is negative 3. Yes, we are meant to have a double negative there. So, number crunching. 0 minus 1 is negative 1. The double negative becomes a positive, and 3 plus 3 is 6. Now, if you try and type that in the calculator, negative 1 divided by 6, you will get a decimal. If you hit math, enter, enter, it'll give you back the exact same answer. Negative 1/6 is reduced. That is your M. Changing to our other formula. Our other formula is Y minus Y1 equals M times X minus X1. So we are focusing on filling in Y1, M, and X. So Y minus Y1 is up here. It is 0 equals M is right here. It is negative 1/6, parentheses X minus X1 is also right here. That is 3. Put up your line. No double negatives this time, so we're going to go straight to distributing. Negative 1/6 times X is negative 1/6X. Now be careful here. Negative 1/6 times negative 3. In your calculator, you are typing in negative 1 divided by 6 times negative 3. If you do that correctly, you should get a positive 0.5. On the other side, we still have Y minus 0. We need the Y completely by itself, so we add 0 to both sides. Our final answer, Y equals negative 1/6X plus 0.5. So what we have done already is we've done both different types of examples on example 1. We've done both equations on example 2. So you are now going to look at example 3 on your own. 3A is just like number 1, and 3B as just like number 2 examples. I don't care which equation you use. You pick and you try these. Pause the video. Okay, let's see how you did. So for me, on the first one, I'm going to use y equals mx plus b. I personally think on problems like these, it's the easier formula to use. So I need to plug in my 3 pieces. That's my x and my y, and that is my m. So y is 4, m is 2 over 3, times x is negative 3, plus b. Put up your line. First thing we need to do is multiplication. I keep the 4 in your calculator. 2 divided by 3 times negative 3 gives you a negative 2. Bring down the b. I need b by itself, so I'm going to add 2 because that's the opposite to both sides. Cancel. 4 plus 2 is 6, and we have b left over. We now have both pieces of information to plug in to m and b. So y equals m is 2 over 3, then we got x, and b is 6, so we have plus 6. Hopefully, whichever method you decided to use on A, you got the right answer. Let's see how you did on B. So B, we had to start by finding the slope. x1, y1, x2, y2. So y2 is negative 3 minus y1 is negative 4. In the denominator, x2 is 6 minus x1 is 9. In the numerator, you had a double negative. So that means we got 2 positives. Negative 3 plus 4 is a positive 1. 6 minus 9 is negative 3. If you do 1 divided by negative 3 and hit math, enter, enter, the only thing my calculator is going to do is move the negative up to the top. Typically, what you will see, if you have a fraction, the only part that's going to normally be negative, is the numerator. So I just move the negative from the bottom to the top for my m. This is m. So, next thing we're going to do is we're going to use the other formula. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And again, our 3 pieces are y1, m, and x1. Everything is labeled for us. Y minus, now y1 is negative 4. Notice the double negative. M is negative 1 over 3, parentheses, x minus x1 is 9. First things first, double negatives make positives. Now we are ready to distribute. Negative 1 times x is negative 1/3 x. Be careful here. Negative 1 over 3 times negative 9. Negative 1 divided by 3 times a negative 9 should give you a positive 3. Other side, bring down the y plus 4. I need y by itself, so I'm going to do the opposite, which is subtract 4 from both sides. Cancels. Final answer is y equals. Keep the negative 1 over 3x. In positive 3 minus 4 is a negative 1. So how did you do? Were you able to get both of those right on your own? So hopefully you're feeling comfortable with that. That's a majority of your new stuff. We're going to look at 2 more examples. So these are special. We are still finding the equation. However, I am giving you a point, and I am telling you that it is either vertical or, in this case, horizontal. In my opinion, these are absolutely the easiest problems. They require no work. So let's show you why. When we see the word vertical, you should automatically think of bucks, vertical bucks. So what that means is the only letter in the equation is x. So we have x equals. Now here's why it's so easy. The number that comes after that is simply the x number up here. Well, that would be this guy. So it's x equals 4, and we're done. I love these. They take no time at all. So horizontal is hoi. Well, what do we know about hoi? We know that hoi only has y. So it's y equals a number. Well, we get that number also from up here. The y value is the second number. So it's y equals 7, and we're done. Those will be your easiest problems on your homework. So one last example we're going to look at is just a real life kind of problem. It's a word problem. So let's take a look at this word problem. The number of times a cricket chirps per minute depends on the temperature. The number of chirps in 2 seconds for 2 different temperatures are shown below. We want to write the equation of the line that describes the number of times a cricket chirps per minute, that's your y, is the chirps, for the temperature x. So let's highlight some important things. First of all, we know that chirps per minute is y, and temperature is x. Well, there's a small problem here. Our chirps need to be in minutes. If you look at our data over here on the right-hand side, it has seconds. So we just need to turn that into a minute. Well, there's normally 60 seconds in 1 minute. So if I need to change 2 seconds into 60 seconds, I have to multiply by 30. Well, if I multiply the time by 30, I need to multiply the chirps by 30. So our data for 1 minute, 0 times 30, is still 0. However, 8 times 30 is 240. So that fixed our first problem. That shouldn't be an issue for you on your homework. This is just a slightly more challenging problem. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of my information and I'm going to write my 2 pairs. X is always temperature. My first temperature is 40 degrees. The chirps that go with 40 degrees is still 0 chirps. My second temperature is 93 degrees. My second set of chirps is 240. Now that we have the 2 pairs written down, it really is a problem like example 2, where we have 2 points. So, first thing we need to do, find the slope. x1, y1, x2, y2. Formula, y2 is 240 minus y1 is 0. In the denominator, x2 is 93 minus x1 is 40. Number crunching, 240, take away 0 is still 240, and 93, take away 40 is 53. Now, I am going to break the rules here. This is a real life problem. real life problems, decimals are allowed. So for this problem only, we are going to take 240 divided by 53 and get a decimal, and we're going to round it to 2 decimal places. So if you look in your calculator, 240 divided by 53 should give you 4.53. I will allow you to use a decimal because it's a word problem. Only on word problems. So this is your M. Now we can use one of the other methods. I know that most of you like y equals mx plus b, so we'll use that method. Y, let's go ahead and use the easier point, the first one. Y is 0, m is 4.53 times x is 40 plus b. We have 0 equals, if you type in your calculator 4.53 times 40, you should get 181.2 plus b. Now, I still need b by itself, so I'm going to subtract 181.2 from both sides. Those cancel. 0 take away 181.2 is negative 181.2. And that's your b. So now that we have m and b, we can plug them in right there and there. So our final answer is y equals 4.53x minus 181.2. So that's part A. Part A was simply writing the equation. Well, in real life, the nice thing is we can use those equations to get answers. So let's look at part B. Part B says, if the temperature is 70, how many times would a cricket be expected to chirp? So I'm going to rewrite my equation. Y equals 4.53x minus 181.2. Now that 70 is going to go in this equation somewhere. So the question was, is temperature x's or y's? Well, hopefully you remember from the previous part, temperature was x. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this number 70 and we're going to put it right there where x is. So our equation now looks like y equals 4.53 times 70 minus 181.2. This is where you get to use your calculator. 4.53 times 70 minus 181.2 should give you y equals 135.9. But since these are chirps, we need a whole number. So we're going to round that up to 136 chirps. And yes, you need a unit on word problems. And that's the end of your lesson. I believe on your homework there's only 2 word problems. So even if the word problems, get you stuck up, you can always start on your homework and get through the stuff that you understand. If you have any questions, we'll see you in class tomorrow.